She thought calling the cops would scare me off. But she didn't know I built that pool and I had the deed to prove it. They say power doesn't corrupt people, it just reveals who they really are. In my 30 years of quiet suburban living, I've learned that's true, especially when it comes to HOAs. And if there's one person who proved it better than anyone, it was Karen Morris. Self-appointed queen of the Willow Pines, HOA, a woman with a clipboard in one hand and a lawsuit threat in the other. But I wasn't just some retiree she could push around. When she came for me and our private pool, I gave her more than she bargained for. It all started early last summer. I'd just come back from a fishing trip with my grandson. We'd spent the weekend at a lake up north, tossing lines and sharing stories. Real bonding time. When we returned, the neighborhood felt different, tense. Folks weren't waving like they used to. I found out why the next morning. Karen had decided that the HOA pool, built and maintained by dues from only 5 homes on the original covenant, should now be open to all HOA members. That included newer homes that weren't paying into it. And by decided, I mean she made up a rule, typed it in Comic Sans, and sent it out like it was the 10 Commandments. Never mind that the original pool wasn't managed by the current HOA at all. It was on shared deeded land for our tiny cul-de-sac, predating her precious board by 2 decades. I'd been living in one of those 5 original homes for over 20 years. My wife and I raised our 2 kids here. We watched neighbors come and go. The pool, it wasn't just a luxury, it was a piece of our shared past, paid for with actual sweat and savings. The HOA had no authority over it. None zilch. But Karen didn't care. She saw power to grab and figured no one would stop her. So when I found 3 teenage kids from Karen's block splashing around in the pool that Sunday afternoon, I did what any rightful deed holder would do. I asked them to leave, politely at first. One of the boys said Karen told us we could. She said it's public now. Karen doesn't own this pool, I said, calmly. It's deeded to our cul-de-sac. You're welcome with an invite. But today's not the day. The kids shrugged and left. No fuss. But I knew it wouldn't end there. By Monday morning, there she was. Karen 50-something, platinum blonde helmet hair, neon tennis visor, and a voice like a rusty gate hinge. She stood on my porch like she owned the block. You had no right, she snapped. I've declared the pool open to the whole association. I sent out the notice. Karen, I said, standing in the doorway with my coffee, you can't just declare things like you're the neighborhood queen. This pool isn't part of your HOA authority, it never has been. It's deeded land. She squinted clearly, unfamiliar with property law, and retorted, you're creating division in this community, Henry. That pool will be open to all members, or I'll have you fined and removed from the board. The pool predates the HOA. You can't fine me for enforcing my own property rights. You'll see about that, she hissed, storming off with her clipboard in hand like it held the secrets of the universe. Later that day, I checked with the county clerk's office to pull the original deeds and documents, just to be sure. Yep, the pool was jointly owned by our 5 homes, never transferred to the HOA, not once. We maintained it, we insured it, we even paid for the repairs when the pump blew out last year. I called a quick meeting with the other original homeowners, George, Sally, Edna, and Rick, all in their 60s or 70s now, but sharp as ever. She's trying to pull a fast one, George said. We built that pool back when this place was dirt roads and model homes. Let her try, Edna muttered. She thinks she's the sheriff of suburbia. Let's see her enforce rules she doesn't own. We agreed to post a simple sign, private pool, access restricted to deeded homes. Trespassers will be reported. That was a mistake, not legally, but tactically. Karen saw it as a declaration of war. On Wednesday afternoon, I caught her on my Ring camera. She was standing by the pool gate, arms folded, pointing like a prosecutor to a landscaper who was trimming hedges. I stepped out to confront her. Karen, you're not allowed back here without an invite. This sign, she said, jabbing a finger at the wood placard we'd posted, is in violation of HOA standards. I'm ordering it removed. Karen, I said, trying not to laugh. You can't order anything on land that isn't under HOA jurisdiction. Her nostrils flared. Then we'll let the police settle this. She pulled out her phone, right there in front of me, and dialed the local sheriff's department. I wasn't worried, I've always had a good relationship with our officers, but I was annoyed she was wasting their time, and mine. Sure enough, 20 minutes later, a squad car pulled up. Out stepped Deputy Ray, a man I've played poker with for the past 15 years. Karen says you're trespassing on HOA-controlled facilities, Ray said, though I could see in his eyes he already knew it was nonsense. I smiled. Ray, you've seen the deeds. You know this is our land. The pool was never part of the HOA charter. Ray sighed. I figured Karen didn't mention that part. He turned to her. Ma'am, unless you have evidence that this pool is under HOA control, you're making a false report. Karen's face went red. I'm the president of this community. He's being obstructionist. Ray gave her a long, tired look. Ma'am, being president of a volunteer board doesn't override property rights. You might want to review your bylaws before making more calls. She stormed off again, mumbling something about lawsuits and insubordination. I thought maybe that would be the end of it. A rational person would have backed off. But Karen wasn't rational, she was on a crusade. And that Friday morning, I got the letter. Certified mail, thick envelope, return address, a local law firm, Patterson, Beck and Strode. The letterhead was fancy, but the contents were laughable. Karen was suing the 5 original homeowners, me, George, Sally, Edna and Rick, for unlawful exclusion of HOA members from community property. The kicker. She demanded $25,000 in emotional damages for the embarrassment of being publicly rebuked in front of a law enforcement official. I sat there, stunned. She wasn't just bluffing. She was serious. I picked up the phone, called the others, and we met that night in my backyard. We sat around the fire pit, legal letter in hand, wine glasses full and tempers running high. She's out of her mind, Sally said. She picked the wrong crew to mess with. George growled. I say we counter, Rick added. If she wants to dance in court, let's give her the full waltz. But I had another idea, one that would take a little more time, but hit her exactly where it hurt. I smiled, sipping my wine, eyes fixed on the dark horizon beyond the hedges. Let's give her what she wants. A court date. But I've got something she doesn't know about. What's that? Edna asked. I leaned in. Back in the day, when the HOA was formed, I helped draft the original land use agreement. And I still have a copy of the amendment that Karen's HOA never officially filed. George's eyes widened. You mean the one that proves their board overstepped its boundaries? I nodded. Exactly. It's been sitting in my attic for 30 years. Signed, notarized, and never challenged. There was a silence around the fire pit, the kind that settles before the first crack of thunder. Let's bring it, Rick said. And so we did. We had 30 days to respond to Karen's lawsuit. 30 days to prepare for the most ridiculous court battle our little cul-de-sac had ever seen. But it wasn't the first time I'd stood up to a bully, and I wasn't about to let her rewrite history or my property rights without a fight. I spent that first weekend digging through boxes in the attic, covered in dust and cobwebs. Back when my knees worked better, I helped draft the original land use amendments with a couple neighbors and a real estate attorney, old Doc Lanning. May he rest in peace. After the HOA formed in the late 90s, we amended our deed to exclude the pool lot from HOA governance. And as I suspected, the notarized document was right where I left it, in a sealed manila envelope marked HOA exclusion -$1,999. There it was, 5 signatures, a county recorder's stamp, and a letter from Doc stating the HOA's jurisdiction did not include the original recreation lot. Karen had no idea it existed. She'd built her whole case on assumptions and power trips. Now we had her cornered, but we didn't want to just win. We wanted the win to stick, to echo through every future HOA meeting like a warning bell. We hired our own attorney, a no-nonsense country girl named April Torres, who had a spine of steel and a mind like a steel trap. She reviewed the paperwork and grinned like a cat staring down a bird. Oh, this'll be fun, she said. She's basing her case on an unenforceable claim. You've got historical deed protection, private maintenance records, tax documents. She's walking blind into a buzzsaw. Court was set for the 3rd Friday of July. Meanwhile, Karen was busy puffing up her board. She mailed out HOA legal updates to all residents, pretending her lawsuit was on behalf of the entire community. She even tried to get residents to chip in for her legal fees. Spoiler, no one did. In fact, her antics stirred up more resentment than support. Folks started asking questions. If the pool wasn't HOA property, why was she meddling? Why was she spending time and money chasing 5 old-timers over a pool none of them had ever been invited to? Her grip on the community was starting to slip. Then came the final week before the hearing. I was walking Rusty, my old lab, past the community bulletin board near the tennis courts when I saw it. A flyer with bold black letters, pool access for all. Rally against discrimination. Meet Karen at the clubhouse Wednesday night. I laughed out loud. Discrimination. We weren't gatekeeping based on race, age, or income. We were enforcing a deed. But that night, I drove past the clubhouse just to see what kind of crowd she pulled. 6 people. Half of them looked confused. One was clearly just there for the lemonade. The next day, a note appeared in my mailbox. No stamp, just slipped in by hand. It read, "You'll regret humiliating me in front of the community. I always win." I folded the note and tucked it away with the lawsuit. Just more fuel for the fire. The day of court arrived. It was a sweltering morning, sun beating down on the courthouse steps. We arrived early, me, George, Sally, Edna, and Rick, all dressed in our Sunday best. April was already inside, organizing our files with the calm precision of someone who knew the other side had no idea what was coming. Karen strutted in 20 minutes late, flanked by her attorney, a young guy who looked like he still got carded buying wine. She gave us a smug look as she passed, like she was walking a red carpet. Court was called to order. The judge, an older gentleman named Judge Morrison, sat down with a heavy sigh. I'd heard he had no patience for HOA drama. Clogging up his docket, Karen's lawyer opened the case with a dramatic speech about community fairness, access to shared resources, and resisting exclusionary behavior. He even quoted the HOA mission statement. I nearly fell asleep. Then it was our turn. April stood up calm and steady. and laid out the case like she was reading a bedtime story, just the facts, just the law. She presented the deed, the maintenance logs, the tax filings, and finally, the 1999 amendment that excluded the pool from HOA oversight. She even had an affidavit from the now-retired county recorder confirming it was never challenged. Karen squirmed in her seat. Her attorney fumbled through some rebuttal about implied community benefit, but Judge Morrison cut him off. "Counsel," he said, peering over his glasses, "you're asking this court to override a recorded deed and 20 years of legal precedent based on the word of a volunteer HOA president." Karen stood up. "This is about principle." "No, ma'am," the judge said sharply. "This is about property law." He banged his gavel once, motion to dismiss, granted, and just like that, it was over. Karen looked stunned. Her attorney slumped like a wet towel. The rest of us, we could barely keep from cheering, but I wasn't finished. We filed a restraining order against further interference with our deeded pool land and submitted a request for damages to cover up legal fees. The judge approved both. Karen would have to reimburse over $6,200 in fees. That hit her hard, but not as hard as what came next. 2 weeks later, during the next HOA meeting, which I made a point to attend, several residents stood up and formally demanded Karen's resignation. Her reputation was toast. People were tired of her clipboard tyranny. One neighbor, Marla, who once tried to stay neutral, stood up and said, "Karen, we elected you to help mow the medians and organize Easter egg hunts, not to drag our neighbors into court." That one got a round of applause. By the end of the meeting, Karen resigned. No speech, no apology. She just walked out, red-faced and silent. In the weeks that followed, things quieted down. The new HOA board took a lighter, friendlier approach. They started fixing real issues: potholes, tree trimming, dog park maintenance. As for the pool, we kept it deeded private, but we extended invites to a few neighbors, especially those who stood up for us. Even little Marla and her grandkids came by for a swim. One afternoon, I was sitting poolside, watching my grandson do cannonballs, when George sat down next to me with a beer. "Think she'll try something again?" he asked. I chuckled. "Karen, she's too busy licking her wounds. Besides," I pulled out the sealed copy of the original deed amendment and tapped it like a trophy. "Next time she calls the cops, I'll hand them this before they even knock." He laughed, raising his bottle. "To peaceful summer days. To knowing your rights," I said, clinking his beer with mine. Because in the end, it wasn't about the pool, it was about standing up when someone thought they could rewrite the rules for their own benefit. Karen thought she could bluff, bully, and bulldoze her way into our property. But what she didn't realize, what she never counted on, was that we'd been here long before her, and we weren't going anywhere. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stick around. I've got more wild HOA tales coming your way.